Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, major investment on a large scale is growing in the Great Lakes Bay region. Its impact has both local and global implications. The investments include several companies providing high-quality polysilicon used in every electronic device in the world. The region is also becoming a bigger force in healthcare with a multi-million-dollar medical diamond project. So what's driving this economic investment? What's the future hold to retain and attract more companies with cutting-edge technology? And what are the barriers that could slow it down? Tonight, Matt Felan with the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance will break it all down for us. But first, we would like to hear from you to help drive the conversation here on the show. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook. You can email us. You can dial into our follow-up hotline to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And if you'd like to watch any of our past shows this season, just log on to deltapublicmedia.org. As advertised, Matt Felan, the President and CEO of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance. Nice to have you here again. You've been on a time or two.
It's home at this point. I love coming on the show.
Absolutely. And have to mention, also a member of the Bay City Rotary Club. He's coached basketball at Bay City Western, does some game announcing. He's coached a multitude of youth sports, serves on the local YMCA board, president of the Bay City School Board. Anything else? When do you sleep?
I'll sleep later.
Okay.
I have time right now, so it's kind of taught. You know, you have to make an impact in community, and I kind of feel I'm at the prime of life, so you got to stay busy.
Yeah, you were doing that. So let's dive in. We're going to spend the bulk of the time discussing some of the major new investment that's happening in the Great Lakes Bay region on a large scale. It's the kind of thing that you and I have talked about. I don't think it's getting enough attention that it deserves. That's going to change on this show tonight. So let's show the viewers and you sort of some graphics outlining some of the bigger projects and their impact, and then we can sort of break them down one at a time. So Hemlock Semiconductor, let's start there. It's in Thomas Township, one of the world's largest providers of hyper-pure polysilicon used in every electronic device. My understanding is they're going to spend about $325 million in federal funds that they got through the CHIPS Act funding. About 1,000 construction workers to get it going and 180 more manufacturing jobs. So what else can you tell us about Hemlock Semiconductor?
So you said it perfectly, and I think this is important, is that sometimes there are things that are hidden gems. And Hemlock Semiconductor really happens to be one of those hidden gems. And the reason it is first of all, I think a lot of people don't fully understand what they do there. Mm-hmm. They hear this, and you hear hyper-pure polysilicon.
Right.
What does that mean?
Right.
And I think the specialty of the company to create the polysilicon that pure is so important because it goes in the most important electronics that you need in the world. And what really happened and why that growth is taking place, part of that happened during COVID. It was really kind of a wake-up call for the country that we needed to reshore some of the manufacturing that was happening. And a product as important as hyper-pure polysilicon and what it means to electronics and the technical world, how could we keep depending on China and other places for that product? And what's great for us is that's done right here in the heart of the Great Lakes Bay region. So what they're doing, Mike, is they're really positioning themselves to increase production. And that's so important because when you produce something as sophisticated of hyper-pure polysilicon, and they always use a term, it's like to the 13th 9 of the level of sophistication.
Over my head, but right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's how pure the product is. The need to produce additional hyper-pure polysilicon is that important. The demand is that high. So what we're going to see, and it's not done yet because there's still work with the federal government. They're still kind of putting a lot of the pieces in place, but it's getting closer. And at the end of the day, that increased production is huge for the region because yes, it's jobs.
Right.
Yes, it's investment, but when you have additional product, now we need people that are using that product. And I think that's where a lot of the opportunity lies for the region.
Okay, the next next one here is SK Siltron. You're familiar with, that produces silicon carbide materials similar to what we're talking with Hemlock Semiconductor. used in the automotive industry, renewable energy, electric vehicles, and solar. That's in Monitor Township. They're getting a $544 million loan from the U.S. Department of Energy that will make them top 5 in global manufacturing of silicon carbide. So similar to what Hemlock Semiconductor is doing, right? But maybe in a different way?
It's a different way. So
Yeah.
think of HSC is a company that produces the raw material. SK is the type of company that then uses that material to produce, right? So one's, think about it the same way you would Michigan Sugar. Michigan Sugar makes the sugar, but then at the end of the day, a candy company, a baking company
Right.
uses the product. Same
Right.
thing here. Companies like SK Siltron use that polysilicon that's made. And believe it or not, in this case, SK doesn't actually use the product that's really produced there. They use other forms of hyperpure polysilicon. But what it is doing is creating more of that reshoring of manufacturing, because they do a lot of the wafer chips, which we heard about a ton again
Right.
during COVID. We saw the auto manufacturing really slowed because there was a chip shortage. They create those type of wafer chips that are used in automobiles and other electronics that are vital to Michigan's economy, vital to automotive. But again, the U.S. not depending on other countries, especially China, for that manufacturing product is so important. And to see SK come and do that here in our backyard, it's huge. I think they're at about 250 employees, but they would really like to ramp up and increase their investment over the course of the next several years. And you could see them going to 500 plus and even more as they've added onto the facility that they took over in Bay County.
And then we've got Corning, sort of based in New York, but they have facilities in Hemlock, and now they're building one in Richland Township. I believe they own Hemlock Semiconductor. Could be wrong there, but I think they do. Material science company that makes glass and optical products used in electronics, automotive, environmental, solar. What they're doing, $900 million, my understanding, for a new solar facility, solar components, about 1,100 jobs, providing renewable energy solutions, generating $5.6 billion in new personal income over 20 years.
Yeah, that's astounding. I don't believe that they own. There's
Okay.
just been various iterations of Dow Corning,
Right.
different things. I don't think they own HSC, but Corning has had a long history in our region. They were part of that joint venture for literal decades with
Right.
Dow Corning. And they work in the solar industry. And again, what they're saying is with HSC's ability to create that hyperpure polysilicon, they viewed it as an opportunity to expand their solar manufacturing. And they decided, you know what? Saginaw County, right across the street from HSC, makes the most sense. And what's great about that job, that's the type of job, Mike, and the type of company that's truly going to grow the region, because this is 1,100 jobs right off the bat. They're hiring now. They had a job fair today at the Dow Event Center, and hiring is going to continue into the spring and into the fall. And you're talking about, 90% of jobs really kind of being hourly jobs, skilled trades jobs. You're talking about electricians, machine operators, et cetera. These are great paying jobs, well-paying jobs, great benefits, the type of jobs that people are going to move for. And I'll tell you today, if I said, do we have 1,100 people in the region that are ready to fill those jobs immediately? I can't guarantee that we do. And that's why this is a great problem, because you're either going to see people in our region that are going to go there because it's a better job and they're going to kind of up, where they're at, or you're going to see people kind of in that 60-mile radius that are going to come here for the jobs. And when they do, and they find a job that they love that's supplying well for their family, they're going to move here.
Right.
And this is why it's so exciting for the Great Lakes Bay region when you look
Right.
at these various investments.
And I want to expand on the jobs and retaining and attracting in a moment. The last one I want the viewers to look at is the Medical Diamond Project, $30 million investment in Saginaw, comprehensive medical education, healthcare overall. What can you say about that?
So this may be the most exciting of all the projects because of what it means.
Save the
long-term.
best for last, okay.
Yeah, the Medical Diamond, it's shaped like a diamond geographically, Mike. So think of the 4 anchors as kind of the area where the Dow Event Center is in the Huntington building, up to Old Town, and then where now My Michigan, St. Mary's was, and now we know it as My Michigan
Right.
and Saginaw and Covenant. That's the geography. And really what's happening there is CMU is going to move all 4 years of its medical school from the campus in Mount Pleasant to downtown Saginaw. and there's going to see just a lot of investment in terms of the medical school itself and that facility, but so much more that's going to accompany that, mixed-use developments, hotels, restaurants. And what I'm excited about, a lot of discussion of existing companies here in the region that are really looking to invest and create new headquarters, new buildings, be a part of this. And I guess I would say, you know, what do they always say, that imitation is the finest form of flattery? Think about the medical mile in Grand Rapids and what that's done to revolutionize Grand Rapids. I think the hope is that we can create something that, not the mile, this one will be the diamond,
Right.
but it's really an investment in medical education and healthcare here in our region that has so much potential. And Sam Shaheen and George Cacano talk about this better than anyone. There's only a finite amount of medical schools in the country, and it's not like thousands at all. It's 150-ish or 160. There's a very small amount, and Mike, they're often clustered in big cities. So
Right.
you'll see 6 or 7 in Chicago or New York, et cetera. So to think about the Great Lakes Bay region being home to a growing medical school, what a phenomenal asset and opportunity to grow around.
So do you think this is kind of intentional? I think about the medical hub, the medical corridor. We were calling ourselves, at least loosely, sort of the heart of Saginaw, the heart of mid-Michigan. We were going to be the heart sort of capital of this area. And now on the heels of that, we've got this semiconductor sort of hub. So has it been strategic that we're going to become this medical hub and this high-tech hub when you think about the Great Lakes Bay region?
You know, I think, Mike, what you do is how do you capitalize on opportunity? And I think at the end of the day, CMU's vision of putting in a medical school and understanding that in order for it to thrive, you need the beds, and the beds that are available in Saginaw between the 2 hospitals. You have other things like Great Lakes Bay Health Centers, the VA, the health department. There's so much there. I give Saginaw credit. They capitalized on the opportunity because CMU needed a destination for its 4 years. And there's nothing that said it couldn't have gone to Metro Detroit. So I give our regional leaders a ton of credit for saying, hey, we want this to remain here in our 4 counties. So that's number 1. And 2 is, as semiconductor has continued to grow, and just looking at how technology has continued to develop, again, it's the region capitalizing on opportunity, understanding that this is the future. This is where jobs are going to be. This is where potential growth is. This is how we bring in suppliers. So again, I give the Joanne Carreras at Saginaw Future and those regional leaders all the credit in the world, because you have to recognize where are opportunities to grow. And I think that's what they've done.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mentioned that. Very competitive to do this. There's the Midwest and around the country, a lot of players bidding on the kind of things that these industries that are staying and expanding. Collaboration of state, federal, local resources, and the other issue is leadership. We better be on the same page, which is really kind of what you're doing with the Great Lakes Bay Alliance, right? And you've mentioned some of the people already.
Yeah, there's no question. And it goes, you know, if you put it though, you know, I'm going to ask a question that you may have asked me. Why is an SK Siltron looking at investing here?
Right.
Why is Corning coming here? Why in both these cases? And I'll tell you, both of these companies had a history here. SK has already been here with SK Saran in Midland. The company, the parent company is already very familiar here. Corning had that long history with Dow Corning. And in these cases, the most important thing is they know our workforce. They understand its productivity. They understand its affordability. They understand that here we are at Delta College. Programs like Fast Start and the ability to work with Delta College, Mid-Michigan College, are universities that they're going to put programs in place to train workforce, not because they've heard it before, but because they've seen it. They've done it. We're a proven commodity in terms of us being a region to these companies. So for us, again, totally, this is the statement. It's capitalizing an opportunity. SK could have gone anywhere. Corning could have gone anywhere. But they know us. They know the region. We've proven ourselves for generations through our workforce what we're capable of, and they were excited to come here and be a part of it.
So you're not maybe as concerned about the talent pool as maybe some are required to run some of these facilities. High-tech jobs require a lot of training. How are we doing there? Are we keeping up? You mentioned SK Siltron, for example, that has a partnership with Delta College. That's critical for some of these opportunities. Other institutions of higher education not only are important and play a role educating the workforce, but keeping these people in the Great Lakes Bay region. You mentioned the brain drain that we talked about years ago. So where are we with the talent pool and finding some of these folks in IT, in engineering? How are we doing there? And what more do we need to go there?
So I think sometimes people often view it as a windshield wiper, right? We tell all these kids, we need you to go into skilled trades. No, we need you to get a 4-year degree and beyond. We need you to go into skilled trades. And it seems to windshield wiper. I think the region has found a very good middle ground finally, where we need a little bit of everything, Mike. We need people that are engineers and in computer science, but we need our families and our kids to understand that jobs in skilled trades are phenomenal jobs, and they offer great opportunities. And there are certain kids that aren't built to just sit in an office all day. They want to work with their hands. And I will tell you, we've done a very good job of getting kids interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. If you look, our FIRST Robotics program is a great example. We're the leaders in the world in FIRST Robotics programs here in this region. We bring home championship after championship. We have kids that are really interested in these fields, and it's important because these are the type of things that correlate then directly to the workforce. We're doing a much better job on this, but we're just getting started. I mean, if you really look at what's going on across the world, across the country, our competition, they're doing the same things.
Sure.
So now isn't the time to rest on our laurels and say, look, we've made some progress. Look at how good we are. Let's pat each other on the back.
Right.
It's actually now the opposite. Now it's time to double down. Now it's time to hit the throttle. It's time to hit the gas. More STEM programming. And I'll tell you, I think some of the opportunities, and you alluded to it, they really sit in computer science. They sit in coding. They sit, I think we laugh. We probably both have an iPhone in our pocket right now, right?
We do.
And they talk that iPhone has more computing technology than what they were using in the 60s to go to the moon, just sitting in our hand. Everything's run by computers and coding and engineering, et cetera. So it's getting kids to better understand those things, but to want to follow that. We're making progress, but at the end of the day, here's the biggest challenge. These things that we're talking about, they're difficult.
Right.
The mathematics involved is difficult. The engineering is difficult. The chemistry is difficult. So it's something that we really have to keep working on every single day.
I'm glad you brought up the skilled trades, because I know you've been banging that drum for a long time. Do you think we're getting some traction there? Because for some kids, as you mentioned, going to a 4-year school, or even a 2-year, educator's going to hate me for this, isn't for everybody. There still needs to be this pipeline, the skilled trades. There's internships. And again, I mentioned one of the investments, it's going to be about 1,000 or 1,100 construction workers. They're going to have to be on site to do this. So do you feel like we're making traction on the skilled trades?
Massive traction
Good.
right now.
Good to hear.
I feel like that has completely turned around.
Yeah.
If you look at our training programs, whether they're union or non-union, the demand is high. The interest with students is high. And even just anecdotally, I've sat in a career class at our local high schools, and I'll say, hey, how many of you are interested in going into skilled trades? And I'll tell you, Mike, at least a third of the hands go up in a room now. And I'll say, what are you thinking? And they're very specific. I want to go into welding. I want to be an electrician. They're really looking at those skilled trades specifically. Those seem to have really high demand. I have a nephew that moved back, military brat, right? He was in the Army and decided to move home and raise his family. And just the simple conversation, this is a guy who's more like 30, said, I want to go over and be an electrician. I want to get into this particular spot. You're just seeing that is something that I think families have come to understand is a win and a success and a great thing. And I think we had gotten into this rut where we somehow thought that the skilled trades was something that you fell back on if you didn't make it in a 4-year college. And I think what we finally found out is that's not falling back on anything. Going into those fields is a win from day one. And I really do feel like the culture has changed there.
That's really great to hear. Okay, we've talked about sort of the great things that's drawing this major investment and the good job we're doing attracting and maybe retaining. So what are some of the biggest barriers, the challenges to growing and expanding even more beyond this? Cost of living, childcare, housing, transportation. Which one do you want to tackle first? Where do we need some work there?
Yeah, so Mike, those are always hard because it's never one thing that I said, if we fix this, then we're good to go. There's a lot. But I'll throw a couple out, and the first two that really come to mind, number one and number two. And I'm going to put them maybe in order that you're not expecting, but I believe number one is childcare. And I think it's just not childcare these days, but it's how is the childcare high quality? How does it include early childhood education? How does it help prepare kids with their reading, with their numeracy, so that they're ready for preschool and kindergarten? How, in many cases, does it include preschool? How do we work with amazing institutions like our ISDs, who, through their work directly with Great Start readiness programs and others, that they're the experts in this space, how do we get their curriculum and their teaching into a lot of the daycares that are all across the region? Because daycares and childcare, it can be done from anything from a Y in a Boys and Girls Club to a church to just a simple home with, you know, an address that someone has a child care in their home, right? That is huge for us, because right now, if, you know, you talk about men and women, if they can't find a place for their family and their children to go, it makes work pretty difficult. Furthermore, I think what some find is that the costs are sometimes so exorbitant that if you can't afford the child care, then there really isn't a point of going to work, because it doesn't it doesn't work. The math doesn't math, Mike. So that creates a problem. So there are programs now like TriShare, which is a remarkable program. It's where an employer pays a third, a state pays a third, and the employee pays a third, and it gets child care in. HSC, again, going back to Hemlock Semiconductor, they have been one of the best users of the TriShare program, where they're fronting a third of the cost of child care for their employees, but the laws behind it of who's eligible, what the income caps are so strenuous and so limiting that if we don't get those changed, we're going to continue to limit the amount of people. So child care is one. And then the second, and it looks different in every community, is housing. Housing continues to be a massive problem. And it can look like anything. So if you're in Midland and you're a young professional moving into the region to take a great job at Dow, getting an affordable house of something that you want to live in, it's tough. There's some really great high-end houses.
Oh, sure.
But if you're in your mid-20s and you're just getting started, those are tough. So the market in that middle housing can be really difficult. If you're in Bay City or Saginaw, as an example, you have the problem where there's a lot of affordable housing, but it's kind of in rough shape. It's been neglected for a long time. A lot of great neighborhoods that need to be rebuilt, revamped, but it's hard for homeowners right now to invest money in those homes because it's so expensive. So where Bay City, as a great example, has done a phenomenal job rebuilding its downtown, there are a lot of neglected neighborhoods. And again, you move in, if you can't afford one of those brownstones or condos and you need to get more of a middle housing, yeah, the selection's great, but it's a quality where you need it. In every location, there's different housing challenges. So if 1,100 people need these jobs just at Corning, and they're going to come here and they're going to kind of commute anywhere from right a mile away up to 30 to 60 miles, where are they going to live? Do we have the housing for those people? In some instances, yes. In some, no. And we just can't say, well, here's what the market has, just make the best of it. Those are the things that will get in the way of our growth. Those will limit us.
All right, I want to touch on public transportation for a little bit, because I actually heard you on WSGW, I think with the head of STARS, talking about this. Providing transportation, for instance, to and from HSC, I think they call it the HSC Silicon Express or something. It's 15 miles. I think I have it right. And I know they've been providing shuttles to and from Frankenmuth, tourist destination. So that's great. So where are you in terms of public transportation, getting people to and from? What are some things we need to do better? What are some things we're sort of doing right there?
So I will tell you, the entities that are in place do a phenomenal job, but they all have limitations. STARS is a great example. It's a city-funded organization. It's not a county-funded organization, right? So they have certain limits that they have. I give them credit. They've been very creative. They've been going to get people from the city out to the thumb for jobs. But let's say that you're a patient at a hospital and you've been told and referred that you need to go to the same system but a city over. Let's say you're in Saginaw and you're told, hey, you need to go see so-and-so in Midland. If you don't have a car, have you ever tried to take public transit from Saginaw to Bay or Saginaw to Midland?
Challenge.
It takes hours and hours and hours. even our volume of available Uber and Lyft drivers are very minimal. So a lot of times, Bay Metro is a great example. They do a phenomenal job in Bay County. If they can move people across Bay County really well, they can get them here. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. Could they always, would more funding and more lines, be something they would love to do? Sure, everyone would love that.
Right.
But we don't live county by county in this area.
No, we don't.
We live in a true region. So we have to regionalize our transit. We have to figure out what that looks like. We have to break down some of those barriers and figure out how can we get people from Bay to Saginaw and Midland to Bay and so on and so forth. Our old friend John Decker from SVSU used to tell a story, and I'm going to age poor John.
That's okay.
But
Had John on the show before. Yeah.
Back in the day, he told me a story of how people used to take a train from downtown Saginaw to downtown Bay City. And on a Saturday, would just go shopping in downtown Bay City,
Right.
and that's how they would move back and forth. And to think that we've actually declined in our ability to move between our communities here in the region, that's a scary proposition. So
Right.
I'll tell you the first thing is that we really have to increase the regional nature in
Sure.
terms of how we move people. But then I think we have to get creative with things like Uber and Lyft and other things, because even areas like Metro Detroit, who've tried to regionalize for a long time,
Right.
have really difficulty doing it. And if you're in Detroit, great bus system. We got the people mover still.
Right.
We got a Q line that kind of moves up
Right.
and down Woodward.
Right.
They really struggle on
Right.
regional transit. So I'll tell you, the region has a fellow in place, a lovely woman named Sumerian Flowers. We got a grant from the state
Yep.
to really look over a 15-month time frame and bring people together to figure out what are some options and opportunities in regional transit. And I think, again, where we're sitting and where SVSU are, MBS are some great initial entities that I think have some phenomenal ideas. And they're even going to be as simple, Mike, as how do we create an app, or how do we get onto Google Maps so that we can show if I'm here and I need to get here, how do I do that via regional transit?
Right.
How do we start putting some things together? How do we start working with legislators to create the ability to create more of a regional framework? So much work to do on that front, and I'll just say for your viewers, we all take for granted the ability that we can move by car from one spot to another to
Sure.
another. But if you don't have the means, you lead a very different life in this region than other people.
Right. Well, Matt Felan, President and CEO of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance, aligning this community. You're doing a great job. A lot more work to do, but we covered a lot of area, and we're doing some great things here. So keep it up.
Thanks, Mike.
And that's our show for tonight. Be sure to join us again for the follow-up on March 18th. We'll be taking a deep dive into the avian flu crisis and what you need to know. That's just in a few weeks. Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, welcome to the follow-up after show, kind of our web extra, the viewers that watched the big show of the follow-up. And of course, we had Matt Felan, the President and CEO of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance, on the big show, and he's sticking around for the recorded after show segment. Those that have seen you, heard you over many years, you're quite the cheerleader for this region, and it's fantastic. You've got a great enthusiasm, and you know a lot of people, and it's just amazing. You also have quite a presence stepping in for Art Lewis on the morning show on WSGW. You've done that numerous times, and you do a great job. You're natural at it. Now you're expanding to what's called, I guess, the Hey Great Lakes Bay, right?
Yes, you got it.
So it's a podcast. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's actually cool. It's a radio show and a podcast.
Okay.
So kind of had two fun tracks to it, okay? So they asked me to fill in for Art when he was gone. It was kind of a one-time thing. And they said, why don't you kind of tie it to the job of telling the story of the region? I'm like, well, this is great, right? And I did it the one time. I said, why don't you do it again? And then it turned into, he's going to be gone for a week. Will you do it for the week? And it's turned into this thing the last 2 years where I've kind of become his permanent guest host when he's out, which is great. But while we were talking about that, I love Art. That guy, I think he just turned 83. And he's a workhorse. And he can go months where he is on Monday through Friday and never misses a show. Never
He's
misses
amazing.
a beat. He's
Right.
awesome, right? So WSGW said, wait a minute. We miss hearing about the region as much, kind of from your angle of really being that cheerleader and marketing and highlighting and talking about the region. Why don't we maybe start a weekly program? And I give WSGW credit because they have other local programming as well. Mi Gente on Air with Larry Rodarte, What She Said with Cristiano Malacara, etc. But we kind of were going down that path, and the Bay Chamber started Hey Bay City. and they were doing different podcasts and shows highlighting Bay City. And the two collided at the same time, where Hey Bay City said, we would like to turn this to you to make this regional, and let's tell regional stories. And WSGW said, why don't we start your own Hey Great Lakes Bay show? So we did. So we're in, it's aired 3 times so far. It's on Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. on WSGW. And then on the Monday, it turns into a podcast. And it's in all the places you would go. You go onto your iPhone and go onto podcasts under Apple Podcasts, look up Hey Great Lakes Bay, there it is. You go on to Spotify, there it is. And Mike, what we are doing is telling the amazing stories of our region.
So in the first couple episodes, who have you had on?
Yeah,
for
so
example?
I can tell you we had Great Lakes Bay Health Centers on.
Okay.
It was, they started a health center inside Bay City Central and Saginaw United, and it was National, School Health Center Month, so that was a great deal. We had on Megan Saman and Heather Gagos from Dow and the Bay Chamber talking about why this is so important. But I got to tell you, as we move forward, this Saturday, I'm going to have a couple of Frankenmuth's finest. I'm going to have Zach and Karina McClellan talking about Proust and their various restaurants. You're going to hear me with Craig Goslin and Michael Misa coming up in the next few weeks. You're going to hear from Michigan Sugar and Neil Junkie and Allison Maxwell, who's a grower owner out in Beaverton. Wow. And again, what you're going to see with us is we want to have fun and tell fun stories of how they relate. And so if you didn't know Zach and Karina and the story of Proust, we had a blast doing it, and we really got into, I'll just call it their origin story a little bit more.
Sure.
But then we're going to talk about the companies and the things that happen here in the region that make us go around. And occasionally, like anywhere, we have blemishes. We got to talk about those.
Absolutely.
And how do we take on those challenges that we talked about in the big show earlier?
So we can go through WSGW, we can go to greatlakesbay.com and some of the other outlets that you mentioned.
Yeah, go to your favorite podcast site. I got to tell you, I'm not a huge podcast person, but once you get involved in it, you're like, oh, hey, they have this one and this one. Are we Joe Rogan yet? No, we're not there. Elon Musk isn't coming on. But our hope is that we can be that destination for regional stories and regional programs. And be careful, you yourself may I may have to put the shoe on the other foot and have you on the other side.
You have to talk to my agent. We'll see what happens there. But you got a who's who already, and that's awesome. And thanks again for joining us on the big show, and thanks again for joining us on the after show segment. Always a pleasure.
Anytime. Thanks, Mike.
And thank you, the viewers, for joining us on the after show.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.